The last wire transfer went through on a Tuesday. Judith was still in her bathrobe, coffee going cold on the counter. She had entered the routing number 3 times because her hands were shaking and she needed to get it right. Needed it to go through fast. Her daughter was in trouble. That's what she believed. That's what she had believed for 4 months. The amount, $18,400. The balance left in her savings account after that transfer, $214. She pressed confirm, and then she sat very still. This is the story of how a 61-year-old retired school librarian from Spokane, Washington lost $120,000, not to a stranger, not exactly, but to the idea of her daughter, to a version of her daughter that was constructed, word by word, over months of daily messages, to someone who knew exactly how a mother loves. Judith had retired 2 years before this happened. 31 years as a school librarian. She was good at it. She liked the quiet. She liked the way children held books carefully, like they already sensed the weight of what was inside. Her husband, Dale, had passed away in 2019. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. Judith used to say that 11 weeks wasn't enough time to grieve, let alone to say everything you needed to say. So some things just stayed unsaid. Her daughter, Melissa, lived in Portland with her partner and 2 kids. They talked on Sundays, mostly. Quick calls. How are the kids? Fine, Mom. How are you? Fine, honey. The kind of calls that keep the connection alive without adding much to it. Judith's house was quiet in a way that had weight to it. She had learned to fill that quiet with routines. Morning coffee, the crossword, a walk around the block, an hour of reading before bed, small anchors, small certainties. She was, by any reasonable measure, doing fine. She was also alone. Not in a dramatic way, just in the way that retirement makes you aware of every hour. It started with a Facebook message. Not from Melissa's account, from a new one. The name was the same, Melissa Hargrove. The profile photo was the same. The message said, "Mom, I had to make a new account. Someone hacked me. Did you get my texts?" Judith hadn't gotten any texts. She typed back, "I'm so sorry, honey, what happened?" They talked for almost 2 hours that first night. The person on the other side knew things. Melissa's childhood nickname. The name of the dog they had when Judith was still married. The street they'd lived on before they moved to Spokane. Small things. The kind of things that feel like proof. Judith never thought to call Melissa's real number that first night. She was in the middle of a conversation. It felt rude to stop. Over the next 2 weeks, the messages came every morning. Sometimes before Judith's coffee was ready. Her phone would buzz and it was always her, always Melissa. Asking how she slept, telling her about the kids, sending a blurry screenshot of something funny one of them had said. Judith started waking up and reaching for her phone first thing. Before the crossword, before the walk, before anything. She thought, this is what it feels like to have your daughter back. Not the Sunday calls. This. At 30 days, the person she believed was Melissa told her she was having trouble with her landlord. Nothing serious, just stress. Judith listened. She was good at listening. She asked questions. She remembered details from one conversation to the next. The person on the other side noticed, thanked her, said, "You're the only one I can really talk to." Judith held that in her chest for a long time after the conversation ended. And now, looking back, she knows exactly when it started. It wasn't the first message. It was the second week, when she realized she hadn't called Melissa's real number once. Not once in 14 days. She had convinced herself the messages were enough. That the connection was real because it felt real. That was the moment. She just couldn't see it then. By the 6th week, the tone had shifted slightly. Not dramatically, just more vulnerable, more tired. The person would mention money indirectly. Bills piling up. A problem at work. Her partner and she had been fighting. Judith listened. She offered advice, not money, not yet. The person never asked directly. That came later. For now, it was just wait, slowly added. In week 8, Judith told her something she hadn't told anyone. That she missed Dale most in the evenings. That the house got loud in a way she couldn't explain, not with noise, but with the absence of it. The person on the other side went quiet for a moment, then wrote, "I think about you more than I should, Mom. I worry about you alone in that house." Judith cried a little. Then she wrote, "I'm okay, honey. Having you back like this has helped more than you know." Week 10. The messages started arriving at night too. The person said she couldn't sleep, that her partner had left for a few days to stay with family, and the apartment felt strange. Judith stayed up past midnight twice, just talking. She noticed she was looking forward to it. More than the walk, more than the crossword, more than her Sunday calls with the real Melissa. Calls she had quietly reduced to every other Sunday, because the messages filled the space so much better. She did not think this was unusual. Here is something Judith never mentioned in any of those conversations. She had a voice. She could have called. Melissa's real phone number had been the same for 6 years. It was saved in her contacts. It took 3 taps. Why didn't she call? That question doesn't have a clean answer. Some people say the scammer made calling feel unnecessary. Others say the format, text, message, slow conversation, created a different kind of intimacy. One you could reread, one that stayed. What we know is that Judith did not call. Not in week 10, not in week 12, not when the first request arrived. Week 12, the person told her there was a problem with the apartment lease. A legal dispute with the landlord, possible eviction. The kids might have to switch schools. She said she was embarrassed to ask, but she didn't know who else to turn to. She needed $3,200, just until her tax return came in. 3 weeks, maybe 4. Judith transferred $3,200 the next morning. Pruzel, the way she'd sent Melissa money before, birthday, Christmas. Once when their car needed repairs. It felt the same, because in her mind, it was the same. The tax return didn't come in 3 weeks. There was a delay. Then a second problem, something with Melissa's work. A paycheck that bounced, a supervisor who was difficult. Judith listened. She asked what she needed. The person said, $4,500 would cover it. I hate asking you again. Judith transferred $4,500, then $6,000, for a medical bill. One of the kids had needed stitches, and the insurance had lapsed. Then $9,800, an emergency. Don't ask questions yet, Mom. I'll explain everything. I promise. Each time, Judith justified it the same way. This is my daughter. This is what mothers do. Dale would have done the same. I have the money. She needs it. The reasoning was short and solid, and it didn't leave room for doubt. Except one night it did. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the screen glowing in the dark, and she typed, almost without deciding to type it, 3 words. She sent them before she could think too hard. Are you really who you say you are? The reply came in 40 seconds. Maybe less. Mom, I can't believe you're asking me that. I've been pouring my heart out to you for months. I've told you things I've never told anyone. And you think I'm what, a scammer? Do you know how much that hurts? And then, a few seconds later, you made me feel alive again. Like I could actually talk to you. And now this. Judith stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed, I'm sorry, honey. I don't know what got into me. Forget I asked. She went to bed feeling ashamed. Not suspicious. Ashamed. For doubting. For hurting her daughter with a question that had taken 4 months of trust and treated it like nothing. She told herself she would not ask again. 2 weeks later, the request was for $18,400. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Judith had just confirmed the wire transfer. She was setting her phone down when Melissa's name appeared on the screen. Her real name, her real number. And she picked up because she always picked up. Melissa asked how she was doing. Judith said fine. Melissa mentioned the kids. Judith said that's wonderful. Then Melissa said something about needing to borrow some money. Not a lot, maybe $500. The car had a noise and she hadn't had time to deal with it, and she was embarrassed to ask, but Judith's hands tightened around the phone. Her breathing shifted, shallow, like something was rising in her chest that she wasn't ready for. She said, "Of course. Let me get the account number." And she didn't say anything else. She stood at the kitchen counter and looked at the window, and the window showed her nothing but the yard was very still, and she stood there with the phone pressed against her ear until Melissa finished talking and said, "Mom, are you there?" And Judith said, "Yes. I'm here. I'm right here." She told Melissa that night. Not everything at once. She didn't have the words for everything at once. She started with the messages, the new Facebook account, the details that were right, the details that somehow she hadn't thought to check. Melissa went quiet in a way that was different from the messages. Real quiet. The kind that has a person inside it. Then Melissa said, "Mom, I've been calling you every other Sunday. I've been right here." The total, when Judith added it up, carefully, at the kitchen table, with a pen and a notepad like she was grading papers, was $120,000. 4 months. 11 transfers. Each one with a reason she had believed completely. The $3,200 for the lease. The $4,500 for the paycheck. The $6,000 for the medical bill. The $9,800 she hadn't questioned. And the last one, $18,400, said the morning she found out it was all false. The money was gone. Zelle transfers don't reverse. Wire transfers don't come back. The person on the other side of those messages had vanished. Account deleted, no trace. Nothing left but the conversation history on Judith's phone, which she read once more before she deleted it too. What stayed was something else. Not just the loss of money, the loss of the version of Melissa she had been talking to. The one who said she made her feel alive. The one who worried about her alone in that house. That version had felt more real in some moments than the real one. And that was the part Judith couldn't quite explain to anyone. She tried once, with a counselor. She said, "I didn't just lose the money. I lost the relationship I thought I was building." The counselor nodded and said that was very common. Judith said, "It doesn't feel common. It feels like something I did to myself." Financial elder abuse, and this is what it was. Regardless of what Judith prefers to call it. Doesn't always look like a scam. Not from the inside. From the inside, it looks like a relationship. It feels like love. What happened to Judith follows a documented pattern that researchers call emotional grooming for financial exploitation. It works because it targets something real, the desire for connection. Specifically, the desire for the kind of connection that has depth and dailiness. The kind that retirement and grief and distance can quietly erode. The scammer had done their research. Judith's Facebook was public. Melissa's Facebook was public. Old photos. Family names. The dog's name, right there in a caption from 2014. The street they lived on, tagged in a post. The details that felt like proof were details anyone could find in an hour. What they couldn't have found, what they built, message by message, was the emotional dependency, the daily contact that slowly replaced the real relationship. The vulnerability Judith shared in those late-night conversations that she had never quite shared with the real Melissa. That part was not research. That part was construction. Judith filed a report with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. She was told there was little chance of recovery. She applied for a grant from an elder financial abuse nonprofit and received 2,000 toward counseling. She still has the notepad where she added it all up. She hasn't thrown it away. She isn't sure why. Melissa visits more often now. Real visits. She drives up from Portland every few weeks and they have dinner and the kids run around the yard and Judith watches them and feels something she can't quite name. Not happiness exactly, not sadness exactly. Something quieter than both. She deleted her Facebook account. She bought a small whiteboard for her kitchen. On it she wrote one rule, just for herself. In her own handwriting, if you haven't heard their voice, you don't know who you're talking to. She looks at it every morning before she opens her phone. If you are watching this, you probably think you would notice. You would catch the accent, the slight delay, the question that reveals a gap in the story. You know your own family. You have been around the internet long enough to know the warning signs. Judith thought so too. She was a librarian for 31 years. She was careful with information. She was not naive. She was also grieving and retired, and the mornings were very quiet. And someone showed up every single day and asked how she slept. If you think this could never happen to you, this is exactly how it begins. It doesn't begin with a lie you can see. It begins with a truth that feels overdue. A connection that feels like relief. A relationship that costs nothing until it costs everything. The protective measure is not suspicion. It is verification. One call. The real number. The real voice. Every time before anything else. If you found this video through a search, you were probably looking for something. Maybe you recognized a pattern. Maybe something felt off. Trust that. Look into it. Make the call. Judith still does her crossword every morning. She still takes the walk around the block. Still has coffee going cold on the counter while she gets distracted by something small. She calls Melissa on Sundays. Sometimes she calls on Thursdays too, for no reason. Just to hear her voice. Just to confirm, without saying so, that she's there. Melissa always picks up. The house is still quiet. That part didn't change. But Judith says she hears it differently now. Less like absence. More like the space where real things can still happen. She kept the notepad. She kept the whiteboard rule. She did not keep the messages. She deleted every one of them. But she says she remembers them clearly. The tone of them. The warmth. How real they felt. She says she doesn't blame herself. She says it with the steady voice of someone who has practiced saying it until it started to become true. $120,000. 4 months. 11 transfers. And one mother who simply wanted her daughter back. The person who knew her best had never met her at all.